And the wheel is spinning.
Always nice to start on time, Bill.
Yes.
How's Denver?
Denver's awesome. We've had a heat wave of 90-something degrees for like the last week and finally broke today.
Oh, wow. We're
living in Texas.
Orlando.
Okay. So let's get started. I'm Bill Bronchick, your host tonight with Jim Francis, my co-presenter. We're going to be talking about the wealth wheel, how to take control of your financial future. You can see that spinning dial there of the wealth wheel, which is hypnotizing you into making more money. That's what it's doing. That's the point of the wealth wheel. So just to get started, I want to share my favorite Zen proverb: to know and not to do is not to know. So if all you do tonight is say, that was really interesting, I learned a lot, and don't take action on what you've learned immediately, then you're kind of wasting your effort there. The best way to implement a strategy that you learn is to go ahead and do it and do something about it, take action on it immediately, if not sooner, after you learn it. Because while you don't want to take action without knowledge, then you're dangerous. But if all you have is knowledge and no action, then you're just another bore at a cocktail party full of information. So if you learn something, you like it, take a step forward, take action on it. And some of you have been on my events before. You've heard me share the 95-5 rule. And that is that in every business, in every situation, in every financial endeavor, there's 5% of people who will really succeed at it on a big level, and then 95% who are going to do, not much at all. So most people are going to do nothing. Some people will do something and take action on it and have massive amounts of results. And that's really just, the population. Most people are the 95%ers. Go to school, get a job, work hard, pay taxes, try to retire at 65. And they feel after a while like that hamster in a wheel that you see spinning on the screen. They're trying to do it, but, trying is lying. Either you do it or you don't. You have to take the attitude that I'm going to make this work and not be a 95%er, but be a 5%er, the people who go out and take action and use no excuses and not let anything hold you back. So in order to become successful and be one of those 5%ers, you have to immediately figure out what the 95% do and do exactly the opposite. So there's what the 95% do. We already figured that out. And your likely picture at age 65 doing what the 95% do is 5% of people will retire wealthy, self-sufficient, 40% are dead or broke, 55% dependent on Social Security or still working for income and support, and often supporting an adult child or an aging parent in retirement. Your odds are almost 50% you will have one or both of those living with you in your residence. So not only got to worry about your retirement, you got to also worry about potentially taking care of an aging parent, because people are living longer and children are being educated less at colleges and universities about how to make money, so they come home and move in with you. I hope those of you who are watching with your family, your loved ones, and hopefully you will take action on it and learn and teach this to your children as well, so they don't come home and move in with you working at Starbucks. So there's two ways to get to the top 5%. There's savings. That's one way. Invest $10,000 in a 1% bank CD, earn $100 annually, pay $35 in taxes, and lose 3% to inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot make that up on volume.
Certificate of death. Certificate of death.
Certificate of death. There is no way mathematically in today's environment to make this work for you to get a prosperous and early retirement. It's just not mathematically sound to earn 1% when inflation is at least 3%. That's if you believe the government statistics. And I'm sure many of you don't. When the government says, oh, inflation is 3%, please, we've been to the gas pump, you've been to the supermarket, inflation is a lot more than 3%. But even if it's only 3%, you're losing 2% every time you invest a dollar in this fashion. So savings is not safe. It's a safe way to go broke. Retirement for many of you is going to look like this. And there's only so many jobs for Walmart greeters. Safe.
The other job, Bill, driving the bus, right?
Driving the bus, right. That's better at least. They're paying $19 an hour in my town for bus drivers.
It'll be the crossing guard in the middle of the hot summer in Orlando, yeah.
Right. Saving, we're taught, is safe, but in today's environment, it's a safe way to go broke. I know that's contrary to what our parents and grandparents taught us. Save, save, save. But the reality is saving is a safe way to go broke using that mathematical model. In 1979, when you can get 11% on your money, that was different, but you can't get that in today's environment. So saving is a safe way to go broke. So what do the top 5% do? This is what they do. They follow the wealth wheel. And that's going to be the topic of tonight's discussion, how you can use this unique strategy and set of strategies to create financial security for you and your family, passive income, and an earlier and prosperous retirement. Now, those of you who have not heard me speak before or see me in a webinar or event, I've been an attorney for 30 years, mostly in business and real estate. I've owned 15 successful businesses, so I'm also an entrepreneur. And I've been a real estate investor for 28 years, so you kind of get the trifecta of someone who's both an attorney, a businessman, and a real estate investor, and approaches it from all standpoints. I've authored 6 best-selling business and real estate books. I've made many media appearances, some of those obviously a few pounds ago. Nonetheless, prestigious media outlets are interviewing me all the time, and also prestigious newspapers and magazines like the Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, Time Magazine, USA Today, Investors Business Daily, and so forth. And I've written articles for Forbes, as well as the business journals online, and many other publications that have published my articles. A little bit about my co-host, Jim Francis. He's been an active real estate and stock investor himself for about the same period of time. He's started and developed over 17 companies for himself and others, both domestically and internationally. I know he flies all over the world. Took his own company public in '96, built it from zero to $108 million in less than 4 years. Very impressive. And has worked with giants, literally, like Tony Robbins, Og Mandino, Brian Tracy, Harvey Mackay, Jim Rohn, and dozens of other big-name authors and speakers. So tell them a little more about your background and what your philosophy is, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 8.5 years Fortune 500, spent 2 years with a Tony Robbins franchise, first one in Toronto, Canada, very successful, did the first firewalk in Toronto, got hooked on seminars and education, found a mentor, a guy named Charles Given, who was a best-selling financial author. I ended up partnering with him in Orlando, Florida for about 6 years. Chuck passed away. And I started my own businesses. When I started my own businesses, they were in the real estate, financial education kind of market, and I've spent time with about 50 plus millionaires and two billionaires, and when I say I spent time with them, what I did was find out their methods, but also find out, what their mindset is. Bill, if you can just click forward to mindset, that'd be great, right? So you definitely want to learn the method, and the method is strategies. The method is tactics. The methods are, this is how you do a foreclosure. This is how you do a wholesale. This is how you do a lease option. If you're doing real estate, this is how you trade the stock market. And I'm going to spend a good portion of my session talking about the stock market and financial strategies, where Bill will talk a little bit more about real estate and also protection and IRAs in terms of investment. But those 50 plus millionaires and 2 billionaires gave me some great strategies, but it's not enough to have the strategy. You really have to believe. Bill started off with that saying about Zen and you have to take action. One of my mentors early was a guy named Tony Robbins, and he said, you need 3 things. You need strategy, belief, and action. And of the 3, the most important is taking action. Even if you take the wrong action, you're moving forward, and continuing to move and have momentum rather than sitting there all by yourself. unfortunately, there's another part to that. Strategy is important, belief is important, and also action. But the belief systems quite often hold people back. In fact, there are several wealth beliefs that people have, and if you have the wrong belief system, it'll hold you back, and you really need to have a belief systems that's new. So I want to kind of show you one or two of those belief systems, if I can just pop them up for you. One is I can't afford it. I hear that all the time. I can't afford to spend the time. I can't afford to spend the money. I can't afford to do whatever. And I'm going to suggest to you that I used to think that way too, but my mentor, Tony Robbins, said, you can't afford not to. And in fact, when you say I can't do something, you must go do it. And that's one of his mantras. If you can't, you must. So if I find myself saying I can't, I must go do it. And that kind of sets you free because you're always doing something moving forward and you believe you can as opposed to you can't. The other thing is when you say I can't, you should be saying, how can I? Bill mentioned that I took a company from 0 to 108 million and I actually took it public. And to take it public, I needed $1 million. And at the time I didn't have the million. So if I had said to myself, I can't do this because I can't find the million to take that company public, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you tonight. What I said to myself was, how can I? And when I found out how I can, that actually led to, going public, and taking that company from literally 0 to 112 million, 46 million, 108 million, in year three and a half. But we also have other belief systems, so it takes money to make money, and that's quite often not true. One of the things that I first got started with was real estate. And like Bill, I've done a fair amount of real estate, dozens of properties. And when I first got started, I had very limited funds. So if you have very limited funds, you can't put down 20% or 30% to do a 70%, mortgage. So my big thing in my first couple of years, the first year I did 2 deals, the second year I did 6 more deals. So 8 deals in the first 2 years. 7 of those 8 deals were either creative finance or seller financing or some sort of lease with option to buy. So if you don't have the money, what you need is to have the knowledge so that you can find the money or structure the deal so you don't need the money. And what you want to learn is OPM, other people's money or other people's skill sets that you can adopt to be yours. There are other belief systems as well, right? Many people are afraid. They're afraid, geez, if I step forward, I'm going to lose money. If I take action, I'm going to lose money, and I get that. And however, one of my belief systems is when fear raises its ugly head, you must take a step forward, right? So whenever you're afraid, that's God tapping you on the shoulder saying, you've got to get past this fear, no matter what that fear might be. I worked in a Fortune 500 company 8.5 years. And when I got in front of an executive committee where I had to present in front of 6, 7, 10, 15 people, I would freeze. My mouth would cotton ball. My heart would pound. I was terrified of public speaking, even small groups, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if I realized that belief system was causing me, great anguish, but it was also limiting me in terms of my ability to move forward. So what I ended up doing was confronting that fear. So I'm going to suggest to you, anytime you say that, geez, I can't, or you find yourself in moments of fear, that's the time that you should step up. In fact, I'm going to suggest you take that step forward as opposed to hiding. And now is a good example. Right now, people are afraid of buying real estate for what might happen with landlording or mortgages or not paying rent. Right now, people are afraid to invest in the stock market. Now is one of the best times to be investing in the stock market. The market is moving up fast and moving down fast. And when it moves up fast and down fast, you can actually make out like a bandit. So we want to take action during this period and not delay, not wait. We don't want to literally survive. We want to thrive, right? And there's a couple other belief systems that I want to point out. Change is risky. Well, change, right, leads to dollars, right? Change leads to more sense, right? You've got to take risk, right? Now, when you take risk, you want to make it calculated risk, so you want to know how much am I investing, what's my rate of return, and more importantly, what's the probability of success? And that's certainly something that I spend a fair amount of time talking about when I'm talking to students about investing in stocks or options or, something like futures. It's okay, what's the reward? What's the risk factor? And what's the probability of success? Right? And if you know those numbers, then change, can be good for you if you learn something new and move forward. A couple other belief systems to kind of talk about. And, I actually wrote a little book a few years ago that talks about the limiting belief systems in real estate, limiting belief systems in the stock market, limiting belief systems, for a small business, and kind of how you can change those belief systems using a system, right, to make them better, to change them, to improve them so that you can attract wealth. And when I say attract wealth, I'm not talking about, that Zen technique of, money's going to show up in my bank account. Money's going to show in my bank account. What I'm talking about is, okay, I believe money's going to show up on my bank account, but I'm taking action today to make sure that it shows up, right? Faith without works is dead, right? You've got to take action, right? And for some of you, you're going to get a chance to pick up this book at the end of the session in the next 55 minutes or so. But we want to make sure we're working on belief systems. So there are a couple more that I want to mention just really, really quickly, right? Belief systems, are things that you can click that forward there, Bill, right? The belief systems are something that you want to do. And we're built on our belief systems. In fact, when we were growing up, our society, our parents, our friends, our business people, they all said, this is what you should do to be successful. What you want to do is go get a job. You want to work 40, 50 hours a week. You want to work for 40 years, right? And then, of course, you're going to take a 40% pay cut when you retire, right? If you want to climb the executive ladder, you want to invest in a 401k, you want to buy a house, you want to pay off the house, right? You want to get married, you want to have kids, you want to pass that strategy on to the next generation. Fortunately for me, somebody like me today and Bill today is stepping in and saying, that's the wrong plan, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with getting a job and having an income stream, but if you think that's going to be the be all and end all for the rest of your life, you're crazy. You have to have a second income stream. You have to have a third small business or stock investment or real estate investment, right? And hopefully you build that up over time so it replaces the job income. So eventually you can kind of walk away from the job, right? And most people are taught, man at work. I need to spend my time for money. And then a light bulb goes on. Somebody says, hey, look, what you really want is you want a small business. You want a business. So they take that next step, right? And that next step is to become self-employed, right? And when they become self-employed, and by the way, the 40-40 job thing is a scam, right? It doesn't work, right? But you want to become self-employed. You want to start to put that big S on your chest, right? So you become self-employed, and now you're in control of your own time. You have a small business. You got some tax advantages. Just like I took my small business with Tony Robbins, and I have my own business, right? I bought a franchise from him. I have my own small business. But man, if I stopped working, the income stopped coming in, right? And most people think that that's a business, and it's really not. Being self-employed certainly has advantages. You can control your time. But let's face it, you stop working for 3 months or 6 months, and there's no money coming in anymore, right? So what you really need to do is you need to get to that next level, what I call the right side of life, which is got to put assets at work, okay? And when I say assets at work, I'm talking about the big four, right? There's more, right? And actually, I wrote a book called The 147 Ways to Make Extra Money, right? Money Ideas and Concepts. But these big four are the most important. One, real estate. You got to have passive real estate. Sure, you can be active. Sure, you can do that. But it's nice to have that steady income stream coming in every month, whether that's from rentals, from an apartment complex, a mobile home park, assisted living facility, right? You want to make sure you've got that coming in. Next is a small business, right? And that small business might be internet websites that are out there pumping while you're not working, right? One of my friends is a guy named Ken Blanchard, author of the 1 Minute Manager and 17 other books. I was with Ken having dinner, and I said, so Ken, what's the secret to having a business? And he said, making money while you sleep, okay? The ability that the business makes money and that you don't have to make money. And that's really where we need to get to, whether that's real estate or small business or whatever it might be. Third is in investments, right? Most people make the mistake of, trying to buy Coca-Cola low and selling it high, try to buy Microsoft low and selling it high, or even worse, they stick their money into a mutual fund or a 401k and do the hope and pray strategy. Geez, I hope it goes up, right? And if you've been following the market lately, you've seen it doing this and you've seen it doing this and it's doing this, so people are kind of freaking out right now, and I'm not, because I have a cash flow strategy, weekly and monthly. I have a investment strategy, longer term for growth. And I even have some speculation where I can play the upside and downside. And that's something that you've got to get to. You've got to stop thinking about, working for a living or even being self-employed, and start having the big four work for you: real estate, small business, investments, and finally, you want to think about something like intellectual property. Intellectual property is writing books. Intellectual property is doing educational programs. They can be sold online and they can be delivered online without you having to be there. Now, Bill and I actually like being here. In fact, our preference would be to be in front of 50 or 60 or 100 people or more, because we like the interaction and the play, right? So you definitely want to move from what I call the 40-40-40 plan to something called the 7-7-7 plan. 7 strategies in 7 years to have $7+ million. How many people kind of like that idea? Well, then you got to do what Bill said at the start. You got to take action. You can't just think about it. You can't say, yeah, he's right. You got to make sure you're taking action. So let's talk about some things to get on the action plan to kind of move us forward, right? One of them is working hard on your business, not in your business. Okay? If you're working in your business, then you're self-employed. And what you want to do is start to use this mantra of, I need to figure out how I can get myself out of this business in the next 6 months so that the business makes me money and I don't have to anymore. And that's a goal or a belief system that I hold to be true. Started 17 different seminar educational businesses, 2 of them for myself and 15 for others. And I've always thought, I'm going to work in this for 6 months. I'm going to turn it into a multi-million-dollar business in terms of income stream. And then I'm going to have a manager and some leaders look after it where I don't have to be there. So work on a system for success rather than itself. And I hope that makes sense to you. It certainly made sense to me as I was learning through my mentorship. And really, I'm here today, and so is Bill, to kind of be a mentor for you and get you on the path to success. Right? So I click and grow rich a little bit there, Bill. Right? So when you think about the wealth wheel, you can actually start thinking that there's 6 major areas, and you might want to write these down. Okay? The 6 major areas are: 1, you have to work on cash flow. So whether it's real estate, stock market, whether it's a small business, or whether it's intellectual property, how can, I get cash flow? And of course, you're going to need education before that. So you want to make sure you have the right strategies, right? So after you've got some education, you got a mentor, you got a coach, you've got some strategies, you want to click and see the cash flow coming in, right? That's the next big thing, okay? There is a book that has 147 different cash flow techniques using different things like e-commerce and eBay and things of that nature. I have 3 kids. When my 3 kids were growing up, they're 28, 26, and 24, as I recall, 23, as I recall. They all are doing different things. And what I mean by that is my daughter's been doing eBay while she was at college, making a little income stream. My son, Mike, he's 28 now. Since age 16, he's been trading the stock market. My son Matthew decided that real estate and stock market and eBay weren't the thing for him. So he decided that he wanted to go into the 3D printer business and has 4 3D printers and sell stuff online. So that's going to be a great e-commerce kind of business. It doesn't matter what it is, but you want to start to build cash flow first. After cash flow, you want to start thinking about, getting a big hit or growth, right? So growth is going to be something like, picking a stock that you pick for a certain reason, whether it's fundamentals or whether it's insider trading or whether it is, and insider trading, by the way, is not an illegal thing, right? Insider trading just means we know who's buying stocks and selling stocks. So we want to buy stocks that the owners think the stock market's going to be going up. So technicals and fundamentals are important things, and also, how to evaluate it. We want to do growth in terms of buy and hold strategy. We want cash flow first, but we also might want to pick an area of the country where it grows and develops. After growth, we want a big hit, right? Right? Big hits are those things that geez, I did a foreclosure and I made 50% of my money or 100% of my money. I took a residential property that was 8 units. I turned it into an assisted living facility, right? that assisted living facility throws off $10,000 to $15,000 cash every single month after expenses, right? And I sell it for $2 million. That's a big hit, right? And real estate can be a big hit, or the stock market if you pick the right stocks or whatever it might be. And of course, you have to use what I call leverage. Leverage is one of those hidden things that people don't really think about, but taking a small amount of money and turning it into a huge hit or huge reward is an important thing for you to do. And there's leverage. Leverage in real estate. Put 20% down, 10% down, 5% down. You got a mortgage in 95%, 70%, however you structure the deal. The value of the house goes up on the total value of the house. In stock trading, we have things like options. Now, I haven't traded stock except for doing a covered call for literally a decade, right? And the reason for that is I much would rather buy an option on a stock or sell an option on a stock because I have 10 to 1 leverage. What that means is if a share of Coca-Cola is $40, one share for 40, I can actually control it for $3 or $4 if I use an option, right? So I put less money to work, but I still control the same number of shares. And the stock market has options which we can use for leverage, but it also has things for leverage like futures, which is 25 to 1, or Forex, which is 50 to 1. So beginning to learn about leverage and margin and how to use other people's money. I mean, one of the great things I love about Bill is, he does partnerships, right? And those partnerships are, finding the deal, but also finding some of the money and putting them together and taking a piece of the deal. What a great way to do business, right? Whether it's a big deal or even a small deal. And of course, the last piece of the wealth wheel that you really need to talk about is taxes and asset protection. And it's actually protection as well, right? When we're doing real estate, we want to be protected. When we're trading the stock market, we want to be protected. In fact, one of my greatest things that I teach people right out of the gate when I'm doing a longer educational session is you have money in a mutual fund, you have money in an IRA, you have money in a self-directed account. How do you protect that money? By doing a little insurance program called a protective put, so that if the market crashes 40%, you don't lose, right? It would have been pretty good for most people to have that insurance in place back in February 23rd when everything started to go to the wrong direction. Yeah, it did. And in fact, a lot of my students did, right? So you definitely want to learn something called a protective put on the stock side, but you also want to learn how to do asset protection. You also want to learn about taxes. Having a small business means I can write off more tax deductions. Having a small business means that, I can have entertainment expenses and meal expenses, providing I'm doing some business around those entertainment and meal expenses. So we definitely want to learn more about, how to structure that, how to reduce our taxes by 20 or 30% just by having a small business in place. One of the gifts I gave my son when he was 21 years old, it was an LLC. Why? So he could learn about how to take more deductions from his trading. And you can actually set up your trading account, to be in a business, which will allow you to take more deductions than if you're just doing it by yourself. So this is the basis of the wealth wheel, and we really want to get into some of those strategies in a little more depth. So we'll click in. And Bill, I know you love the frog story, so I'll turn that over to you, man.
So doing nothing is risky too. A lot of people are afraid to take action for fear of failure, but doing nothing is a decision. And it's like the frog story I like to tell. If you put studies have shown you put a frog into boiling water, it's going to jump out. But if you put a frog in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, you get frog soup. So what you need to do for yourself is prevent yourself from becoming frog soup, because frog soup is not success. So if you are in a situation, it's my doorbell going off, excuse me. The Amazon guys here. Doing nothing is risky too, because if you are in a situation where you have a decent job and a 401k and you're supporting a family and you're making $100,000 a year or more, you're probably doing okay, but you're probably in the back of your head saying, do I really want to do this for another 20 years? I really want to enjoy life more, but I don't want to reduce my income, and I still want to retire early. So being able to do that without having to retire 20 years ahead is something that a lot of people want to do. And the difference between a rut and a grave is the depth of the hole. If you're in a rut, you don't want to end up in a grave. You want to put the fire underneath yourself by thinking into the future 10 or 20 years from now. What do I want my life to be like? Do I want it to be the same as I'm doing now that I don't really enjoy that much? Or do I want it to be different? So something to think about. So some real estate strategies we want to talk about, which was part of the wealth wheel. There's a whole bunch of strategies for creating cash flow, but one of them is wholesaling for quick cash. That's an active strategy that you'll do in the short term to generate some cash chunks. Foreclosures and short sales, those are opportunities to get big hits. And creative financing, ways to leverage by using seller financing and lease options and subject to deals. These are all strategies that you need to learn as part of your portfolio in the wheel strategy.
On the stock market side of the fence, the first strategy you really have to learn is how to protect your account. How to make sure that if you do have a 401k or you're in mutual funds, and I gotta say this because it bothers me. The average in the stock market over 100 years is 7% per year, right? 7% per year, and there's usually about 1% of that 7% that goes to the fund or to fees or to front end or back end or whatever it might be. So you're really only making 6%. And Buffett said it incredibly well. The first thing you've got to do is to protect your assets, protect your account. So if you're listening to me really closely and you get nothing out of this 60 minutes, you must learn about a protective put. You must learn how to create some insurance. So if the market goes down, you're protecting your nest egg, you're protecting your assets. And many people are saying, well, we had this big downtrend and we're up the uptrend. Man, I've got a lot of trader friends. I read a lot. I follow technically the market, and I don't think we're done. I think there's another big crash coming, and it's going to be tied to the economic piece, but you've got to learn how to protect your account today, right? I also firmly believe, in terms of investment strategies, I talked about real estate, stock market, small business, and intellectual property, that one of the best things you can do is to do what I call the 45-45-10 strategy. And the 45-45-10 strategy is a balanced approach to investing. What that means is most people put all of their money into the stock market, 401k, whatever it might be. And when they do that, working in a job, I put it into the stock market. I don't have a cash flowing strategy. I'm not making cash from the market weekly or monthly. And I suggest you want 45% of your portfolio to be making cash, whether it's real estate and rentals, or whether it's doing something called a credit spread or a covered call. You want cash flow coming from the stock market. The next 45% should be in growth, which means you really need to learn how to pick a good stock. 4 key areas for picking a good stock. 1, fundamentally is it sound? 2, technically is it sound? 3, are the investors, the owners, the directors buying the stock or selling the stock? That'll give you a hint as to whether the company's good or bad. And what's it valued at? Buffett, and he's one of the guys that I watch regularly and listen to and have studied, quite extensively. He says, I can't time the market, but I can time a stock. What he means by that is, I know when Coca-Cola goes below $40, it's a good buy, right? I know when it goes above 55 or 60, that is not that great a buy, right? So you want to make sure you're picking the right growth stocks and strategies. The 10% is more about speculation, about those big hits. It's about, buying Google and having it run. It's about, Tesla and buying it run, but not buying it based on news, based on technical analysis. So you've got to learn a little bit about support resistance and technical analysis to really make sure that you do well in the stock market. And most people will start to freak out with that. And it's actually pretty simple. Here's what it's doing. It's going up. We should get in here and out there, right? And it just takes a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of action on your part, to get past that little fear before you can actually take control of your financial future by taking control of your investments. And of course, leverage. I totally believe, most people, shy away from options. They think that options are risky, and options were actually created to reduce risk. right? So we want to learn about, option leverage. We want to learn about futures leverage. And we also want to learn about Forex leverage. So we can actually put more of our dollars to work and get a better rate of return. So just a couple of strategies with respect to that. Right? Bill, click.
Focus. Follow one course until successful. I think a lot of people have opportunities that they see, and your inbox is flooded, of course, with offerings and courses and seminars and webinars. And people tend to do is dabble. They go from one idea to the other looking for that quick fix, and there really is none. You have to do is, especially if you have goals, a lot of people have 10, 15, 20 goals on their bucket list. If financial success and financial security is on the top of your list, then focus on that and maybe one or two other things until you get where you need to go. Then you could do other things. You may have goals like, well, I want to travel the world, and I want to learn how to speak German, and I want to take my kids to the best universities. Those are all great things, but they all require money and means. And if you focus on the means, you can hire an interpreter to follow you around, and you can afford to send your kids to Harvard and get tutored in order to get accepted there. So, narrow your focus into one or two or three things like a small business, real estate, stocks, and so forth, instead of getting scattered with all kinds of ideas where you become a jack of all trades but a master at none. Specialized knowledge is exactly what you need to do this. And in the book Think and Grow Rich, which was very influential in my life, I've read it 24 times. I read it almost every year. Napoleon Hill writes, there are two kinds of knowledge. One is general, the other is specialized. General knowledge, no matter how great in quantity or variety might be, is but little use in the accumulation of money. The person who stops studying merely because he has finished school is forever hopelessly doomed to mediocrity. No matter what maybe his calling, the way of success is the way of continuous pursuit of knowledge. And that was in 1938 when everyone went to school, worked hard, got a job, and retired at 65 with a gold watch. It was very insightful for his time, but these days, it's very, very insightful. Often when I do live seminars, I ask people, how many people have a college degree or from a university or college? And people will raise their hand. I'll say, keep your hand up if you're doing what you went to school for. And almost all the hands go down because people change careers 3 and 4 and 5 times in their lifetime because that traditional type of knowledge, or the general type of knowledge that you get, is not going to teach you what you need to do to become financially fit.
Hey, can I add one thing there, Bill? So, I studied Napoleon Hill too. That book changed my life, no question. First book I read on wealth and mindset and all those kinds of pieces. But what most people don't know is, Napoleon Hill did this book about, the 13 strategies or things for, becoming successful. But he also studied 3,500 people who were failures, right? And he came up with one thing that all 3,500 had in common. And you know what that one thing was? Inaction. They were afraid and they didn't take action. So if you really want to put yourself apart, yes, adopt the 13 strategies, right? The 13 tactics. But the more important thing is you must take action if you really want to live your dreams and your goals. Don't survive, thrive.
That's right. The next piece we want to go into more detail about is protection. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. So learn to pay the least in taxes. And a lot of times when I talk about taxes, people's eyes will glaze over their head and say, well, that's boring. Talk about something sexy like how to buy real estate with no money down, or how to make money in the stock market. Well, saving money in taxes is the easiest way to become more wealthy without working harder, but by working smarter. So you should become a master of the tax laws that relate to your investments and your business. One of them is setting up a self-directed IRA where you can invest tax-free in things like real estate, the stock market, certain types of businesses, and other alternative investments. And protection also involves protecting yourself from things like lawsuits, predatory lawsuits, lawsuits that are bogus, frivolous, or maybe not bogus or frivolous, but you just screwed up. I mean, that's why a lot of people are afraid to take action, because they're afraid they might screw up and cause a liability. And by protecting yourself and learning how to set yourself up properly will give you the confidence that you need to take action. And there's a free book that you can get your hands on. We'll tell you how in a little bit, on tax and asset protection strategies that you can download, and we'll give you that information at the end of this webinar. The golden rule of law, we all know it. He who has the gold gets sued. So learn how to protect yourself, your business, your family, your real estate from liabilities, lawsuits, taxes, and other pitfalls. By the way, Jim, the government has simplified the tax system and reporting this year. So it's a very simple new tax package. 2 questions. How much did you make last year? Send it in.
And based on the bailout, I'm sure that's going to be more.
Exactly. So it is your right under the law to pay the least amount of tax possible. It's not unethical. It is not illegal. It is not your moral obligation to pay the most amount of tax. Even Bernie Sanders, who wants to tax everyone at 95% at a town hall, they asked him, well, you make a lot of money. Why don't you just voluntarily pay more? You know what he said?
With his 5 houses, too.
That's right. 80% of the people that make 50% or more per year own a small business. So having your own business is going to be one of the best ways to save in taxes and should be an essential and integral part of your plan. And speaking of plans, if you want to take action and learn more about the strategies we've been talking about and a whole lot more in detail, Jim and I are doing a financial freedom workshop online. It's next Friday, June 26th, live streaming online from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which translates to your own time. I mentioned this in this webinar, Jim, it was Eastern Time, and I got an email from someone that says, you really should put all the different time zones. And I really had to resist responding with, if you can't figure out your own time zone, then I don't think you're smart enough to figure out how to make money. But I resisted anyway. So it's 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Central, and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can add the back end yourself and figure it out. It's $199 per person. Registration is limited to just 100 people because that's what Zoom limits you to. It's presented live and online streaming. So it'll be similar to this, but much more detailed, longer sessions. You're going to learn 6 crucial steps to building wealth quickly, how to create a realistic financial plan for an early and prosperous retirement, 5 ways to slash your taxes by up to 50% legally and ethically, which is not something you hear out of a lawyer's mouth too often. How to eliminate limiting beliefs and replace them with a wealth attraction mindset. How to protect your investments in the stock market from turmoil that is certainly going to be commonplace in the near future. How to use your IRA or 401k to invest tax-free in real estate. How to cut living expenses by 20 to 30%. Asset protection, protect yourself, your business, and your family from lawsuits and liability. How to get started with your new financial future right away. And today we're going to do the event for just $29.97, which includes a recording of the whole event, plus some bonuses. I am going to, in the chat here, copy and paste the link for registration. You'll find it on our last slide, but if you look in the chat, you'll be able to see it there. Some bonuses you're going to get, 5 free books, training materials. They're called the M2 training materials. M2 stands for Millionaire Mind. Keys to Wealth and Prosperity, How to Kill Negative Beliefs, 47 plus, I'm sorry, there's a typo, 147 plus money-making ideas. Credit repair and improvement, tax reduction and asset protection, nearly $500 value. Also 5 books on real estate, business, taxes. For the first 30 people who register from me, you're going to get these books. And that's a total of 10 books as bonuses. And my mom taught me, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you can't do both. God rest her soul. I'll never forget that, what she taught me. And what Walt Disney taught me, an old friend of mine. We went to high school together. He stole my idea for Disney World. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. A lot of people are talkers. Very few people are action takers. 3 frogs are sitting on a log. 2 decide to jump off. How many frogs are left, Jim?
All 3.
All 3. Why is that?
Because It's not about making the decision, it's about taking action.
That's right. Deciding is one thing, taking action is a whole nother thing. So sign up at the link below, and in the link that I popped into the chat there, you can click on that or just type it in legalwiz.com/financial-workshop, legalwiz.com/financial-workshop. It's Friday, June 26th, which is next Friday, live streaming online from 10 to 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. When you register, you'll immediately get a link for the 10 books to download, as well as the link for the workshop itself. And you'll get a couple of reminders and just some information as we go about what we'll be teaching over the next week. We'll be sending some emails about what we'll be teaching in more detail at the event. If you're serious about taking control of your financial future, this is not about the money. It's only $30. And by the way, you could bring a guest with that too if you want to. So if you want to give your best friend, your business partner, your spouse, or your kids a link, copy of the link with your sign up, that's just fine. But we're going to be limited to 100 people, so keep that in mind. And only the first 30 get the bonuses that I talked about. However, it's a commitment of both time and mental focus. Most people, every person on this can afford $30, and you can all afford to spend the time on yourself a whole day, a Friday, even if you have to take a sick day from work, it's worth it. Now, if you can't make it, if you have your kids are getting married that day, I'll give you a pass. But with your enrollment, you get the 10 bonus books and you get the recording of the event. So if you can't make it or you can't make all of it, still register anyway, because you can watch the replay. We're going to record the whole event. And for those who sign up, we'll be able to watch it as a replay in addition to watching it live and asking questions live. Any final thoughts you want to share, Jim?
Yeah, just that, we're going to go into that wealth wheel in more depth. So we're going to take out the chunk on education and cash flow and growth and go into strategies so that we can adopt them and use them and apply them actively with respect to that. And I kind of know that there's kind of, three types of people that usually attend workshops like this. There are people that I'll say have limited funds. There are people that have some money, and then there's people who have a lot of money. And when I say that, I know what is best for all three groups, right? So the people who have limited funds, man, you need to do something completely different. You got to get outside that comfort zone, and you really need to start to take a look at how have other people become successful with limited funds, just like me or Bill or other people that have been out there. People who have some money, maybe $500 to $5,000, you must learn the skill of leveraging for real estate, leveraging for the stock market, leveraging for small business or e-commerce or eBay or Amazon, and we'll touch on those things as well. Your big word is leverage. You've got to leverage your existing assets, whether that's credit cards or whether that's, your cash or your savings. And then there's people who have a fair chunk of cash, I'll say 5,000 more, but 50, 100 grand. Man, the best thing you can do is spend a few dollars to learn how to protect that, because what most people don't realize is you're driving down the highway and there's an accident coming. And what you want to do is be prepared for the accident, whether that's a divorce or whether that's a death or whether that's a health issue or whether that's a loss of a job. You've got to have that second income, that third income, and you want to protect that nest egg at the same thing. So for $30 to get 10 books, $2 or $3 a book, get 6 hours learning about the wealth wheel, starting to think differently, starting to leverage our cash and starting to build long-term our growth and protect it. That's a steal, Bill. I can't believe it. That's great value.
It's not about the money. It's about whether you think that you are important enough and you're worth enough to invest yourself. Investing in yourself is the best investment you can make. So don't use the excuse that I can't afford to take off the time, or of course you don't have the money. $30 is not the issue. The question is, if you say I can't afford to take off a day of work, you really need to be at this workshop.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you can't take one day off, whatever it is, whether it's recreational for a best buddy, or for learning how to change your financial future forever, you really need to be